When it comes to champion statistics here in Raid Shadow Legends, speed is king. That has always been true, and it will always remain true. Now, here in 2025, there are a bunch of different ways that you can get speed into your roster, but there is no denying the value of a good old-fashioned speed set farmed from the Dragon's Lair. That's why the event that is currently going on is so important. If you're not familiar with this, this is what's called a drop fever event, and this increases the chance of a specific gear set dropping from a specific dungeon. In this case, increased chance of getting speed gear from the Dragon's Lair. Now, if you don't know how this works exactly, basically, there are typically 9 sets of gear that drop from this dungeon, and speed is going to drop 1 out of 9. So basically 11% of the time. However, during a drop fever event, they've added 2 additional speed sets. So instead of having 1 out of 9, we have 3 speed sets out of a total of 11, or roughly 27% chance of getting speed gear. That's a massive increase. This is one of the reasons why everybody should be farming Dragon's Lair during a drop fever event. Because regardless of where your account is, if you're early game, mid game, late game, or end game, raid players never run out of a need for speed gear. So in today's video, what we're going to do is we're going to start with Dragon 20. I'm going to talk about how to build your first consistent stage 20 farm team. And then we're going to hit the fast forward button. We're going to move up through the stages so that we get faster, more consistent until we are finally at stage 10 of hard mode and speed farming there. So hopefully this video will have something for everybody, regardless of your account progression. I am Colred. This is Colred Plays Raid Shadow Legends. Let's get started. Just a quick reminder that my Takeover Tuesday live stream is coming back this Tuesday, January 7th at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That time zone is -5 UTC, by the way, for those of you not from the US. Now, I am excited to get back to it, but remember that you need to be a member of our Discord community to be eligible for your free account takeover. So while you're here, why don't you join our Discord community, and don't forget to smash that like button and consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks so much. Can't wait to see you on Tuesday. Now let's get back to your video. Typically, when you have a drop fever event, there is a corresponding dungeon tournament like the one we have here. We have a dragon tournament that is currently going on. This is not in conjunction with a Titan event or a fusion event, which sometimes happens as well. But that's okay. These things happening simultaneously are more than enough justification for us to farm dragon pretty hard right now. Now, if you are currently in a lull and you're kind of hoarding resources for the next fusion event or Titan event, I understand, and that's fine. But hopefully this guide will help you the next time you decide to do one of these drop fever events. So we're going to go over here to the Dragon's Lair. And like I said, we're going to start with stage 20. But if you are not yet at stage 20, you're still going to want to watch this first part of the video at least, because this will probably help you theory craft your very first stage 20 team. One thing to remember is that as you are leveling up to stage 20, or if you're going past stage 20, that the affinities change, right? Here we have a magic affinity boss, and the minions will also be magic affinity, but every other stage has a different affinity, and that may change the effectiveness of some of your champions. So be aware of that and make substitutions if you need to. But we're going to start with stage 20, and we're actually going to start with a relatively free-to-play friendly team that might be more of an early mid-game team. Now, I can show you the statistics on my champions. My champions are built pretty well. Remember, I'm a free-to-play player. I'm not in the content creator program. So I didn't rebuild any of these champions. I didn't deliberately ditch stats, but I will talk about the stats that I think are probably necessary. You're going to have to experiment with your own roster to see what stats work, because every composition's a little bit different. Sometimes you rely more on a healer, and so you need your healer to be tankier. Other times you rely more on your DPS, so you need your DPS to hit harder, but you don't need as much tankiness. It's going to be different for everybody. But for right now, what I've done is I've taken 2 rares, a starter champion, could be any of your starter champions, and Apothecary. Apothecary is primarily here to get us going fast enough, because remember what I said at the beginning, speed is king. We need to be going fast. Then we have a decreased defense champion. In this case, Duke the Pierce also has a decreased attack, which is very useful. And if you can get that into one of your, into your team composition through one of your champions, you want to try to do that. We have a cleanser and a block debuffs champion in Sanguinia. That's useful here. And then we have a healer and reviver in Rector Drath. She also has an A1 with a decreased attack. So if we were just going to look at these champions very briefly, The key skills here are that Athel is going to have a weaken for the boss. That's going to help us burn through the boss a little bit faster. And she's our primary AoE damage dealer. Duke the Pierce is basically just a debuffer, but he also hits decently hard. You can see I have him at 100% crit rate because he needs that for his decreased attack and decreased defense. And his crit damage is okay at 173. You can see Athel's is at 191. None of these champions are built super well, but if you are a relatively early game or early mid game, they may seem like they're built really well. I would say, though, that the most important stats to think about here are going to be your speed and then whatever main stat you need for doing the job. So in this case, for Athel, it would be crit damage. For Duke the Pierce, it might be like defense and accuracy. Accuracy for the debuffs, defense because he's basically a tank. Apothecary here just needs to be fast. You can see he's at 245 speed. The rest of his stats don't really matter that much, but you want a little bit of survivability on him. He is much tankier than he needs to be for stage 20 here. You're going to see that this team is not really in danger of dying, with the exception of maybe Athel. But if you have your starter champion still in lifesteal, that's going to make it less likely that they die. If they're out of lifesteal, then it's going to be really important that they're a little bit tanky and you have some decent supports. Sanguinia here is running decently fast at 236. She has the accuracy she needs to land her debuffs. And then remember that she also is the cleanser, so you don't really need, you don't need the accuracy here. The accuracy is a bonus because what she does basically is she pulls all the debuffs off of the rest of your team and then drops them on the boss. So as you can see here, it has a 100% chance of transferring all debuffs from this champion to the target and removes all debuffs from all allies except this champion. So the cleanse part doesn't take accuracy, but if you want to transfer the debuffs onto the enemy, then it does take accuracy. So you can build Sanguinia with or without accuracy. And then finally, we have Rector Drath, who is decently fast and tanky. You can see 3.5k defense, 67,000 HP. And the accuracy is not really necessary on her either, but she does have a decreased attack on her A1. Now, very quickly, remember that these total stats include my area bonuses. So I actually have some dragon area bonuses that I put in when I got to hard mode stage 10 to make that easier. So it does elevate the stats here. But what I would say you are looking for is from most of these champions, you're looking for about 2,500 defense or more. So maybe 2.8 would be like a really sweet spot up to 3K. And then as far as HP is concerned, I would say a minimum of 40, probably more like 45,000 HP, and then up from there. For speed, you want a minimum of 206 on everybody if you can get it. If you can't, that's okay. If you bring a speed boost champion, then you can go a little bit slower at like maybe high 180s, low 190s, something like that, or up. But if you don't have a speed boosting champion or turn meter fillers or a speed aura at the very least, then you're going to have to get that speed out of your build. So again, like if you're running with Haikatun, say, as your speed lead, that's fine, by the way. I know she's weak affinity here, but she doesn't really need to hit hard. You're not worried about weak hits with her. She doesn't debuff that much. So in that case, that might alleviate the speed stat requirement here. And then as far as the roles are concerned, debuffer, speed booster, cleanser, and then reviver and healer. These could be any champions, really anybody who does these roles. You don't need these particular champions. So again, if you had Haikatun, you could take Apothecary out. But if you have somebody else who gives you plenty of turn meter fill and speed boosting, you can use them instead. You could certainly use legendaries. You don't have to stick just to epics and rares here. But I wanted to start with a team that had no void champions and no legendaries, just so you see that you can put together a decent team comp for Dragon 20 with these kinds of champions. Now, I put in a little bit of AI, but the AI doesn't really matter because you could just run this on full auto. So I'm going to get this going. And this one's going to take a little while, so just be aware of that. But, the important thing here is survivability. You're not trying to speed farm yet. When you get to stage 20, the thing that you want to do is make sure that you're as close to a 100% success rate as possible. That's why we have that reviver. That's why we have 3 supports here, basically, or even 4 if you're considering Duke a support as well. So we're getting a lot of survivability out of this team. They're really tanky. They move fast. They have lots of heals. They have cleanses, revives. They have damage mitigation. They have everything that you need to stay alive. And again, if you don't have these particular champions, just look for other champions that might work here. A good free option, by the way, for your kind of healer support reviver might be Jamarsa. Jamarsa is a free champion that you can get by doing referral accounts. And so you could replace Rector Drath here with Jamarsa. That would work really well. As far as cleansers are concerned, one of my favorite champions actually for this role is Runekeeper Dazdurk. He is a void epic. That's why I didn't use him here. But he not only gives you turn meter fill and a cleanse and a heal, he also gives you an increased attack for your entire team, which may speed up the run a little bit. Athel does bring an increased attack, but it's not always up. It's not up on anybody else, and it is the lesser increased attack. So Runekeeper Dazdurk would bring the greater one. There are certainly other champions you can use. We'll get into more of them with the additional teams that we work on. But right now, all we're trying to do is get through the waves and get to the boss. Quick refresher, if you've never heard this from me before, or you haven't heard it in a while, there are 3 ways to handle the waves in this fight, or any wave content. You can nuke out the waves, you can tank up the waves and just survive them, or you can crowd control the waves and then you don't have to survive them because they never go. So this team is primarily using the tanking method, right? Decrease attack on the waves, and then heals, veils, cleanses, and like that. We basically are just surviving those waves. When you get to the dragon boss, the most important thing is that you don't let his stun kill you, the poisons kill you, or his purple bar kill you. Remember, he gets that big purple bar, he gets that secret attack, and if you break the purple bar, he goes back to a normal attack. With this kind of team, because we are going support heavy and tank heavy, we may not be able to break that purple bar. That's okay. That just means what we need to do is have enough healing and survivability, and we certainly do with this team to get all the way through. And then we're just going to work that dragon down over time. Like I said, you can see here, we're not really in danger of dying. That's because my stats are higher than what you need. You might be closer to dying. Like I said, you might have to mess with your gearing and your champions and the affinity in order to make sure that your team can get through this. One gear consideration is if you are close to dying every time, consider putting somebody like Sanguinia in a shield set, because that's going to give additional survivability to your entire team for just one gear set on one champion. And she would be a good person to put into that set on this particular team comp. But if you don't have a shield set, then consider if you could get a little bit of regen or immortal gear or something else that adds survivability to your individual squishy champions. If it's your damage dealer, think about lifesteal or bloodthirst. Okay, so not too bad. As you can see, 3.5 minutes here. Again, probably the squishiest champion here, the one that was most likely to die, was Athel. Having that HP aura gives us a little additional survivability as well. But remember that Apothecary's aura also works here, and that's defense. So if you thought defense would help you more than HP, you could also swap that out and try that combination. Okay, so that is the worst team that we're likely to see here today. And now the goal is, once we get 100% consistency with our farm, is can we improve the speed of this farm? We do want to be able to farm higher stages, but in terms of stages, after stage 20, probably the next best farming stage is stage 24. You're going to want to get to 24 and farm that stage. And as you can see, that is a different affinity. So be aware of that. But still, for tournaments of this type, typically you're going to farm stage 20 because it's the best place to farm, like to get the points per energy for tournaments. It's the most efficient stage. So generally what we want to do is just get faster and faster at stage 20. And then eventually you're going to push up to 25. You might farm it occasionally, especially during like a drop fever event where you're getting 3 times the gear, because this is a place you're going to get better gear. And then eventually you want to get to hard. But for right now, what we're going to do is we're just going to look at a slightly better team here for stage 20. I'm going to try to stick with a free-to-play friendly team. But this was our first dragon team. We're going to go to this second dragon team. Now, again, we're going with the free Haikatoon in the speed lead. This is going to speed us up a little bit. Speed is a universal multiplier. It makes our team stronger. And so if you can get more speed into your team, you generally want to. My Haikatoon is faster than my Apothecary and also has that speed aura, so everybody's going to be going significantly faster. In addition, I brought an Arbiter, a free champion that everybody should be able to get. You may not have your Arbiter yet, and that's okay. You can stick with some other champion in this role. This is giving us an increased attack and turn meter, so if you have a Seeker, that's a really good champion. If you have Runekeeper Dazdurk, that's a really good champion. There are others who can do this job. But the reason I'm bringing in Arbiter is because she's going to replace that weaken on the A1 that we lost from Athel. So I want to keep that weaken if I can get it. Now, Ugo is replacing Duke the Pierced here. So she is now the decreased defense champion, but she also brings us a mini cleanse and a block buffs debuff. So that's going to prevent the boss from getting his increased attack, which will be nice. And then again, she can potentially cleanse some of the poisons or the stun. Our cleanse is not as good here. Sanguinio was a better cleanser, but I'm trying to consolidate the team a little bit to make it both faster and more reliable. So I'm bringing in Seal of the Drakes instead of Rector Drath. Seal of the Drakes has that AoE stun for the waves that is going to help us control the waves and maybe speed up our wave clear a little bit. And then in addition, she's going to provide that healing and revive if we need it on the boss. And then we've upgraded from our Athel to a Royal Guard. This is a pretty well-built Royal Guard. And again, I'll show you the statistics on this team. Now, the speeds here are much, much faster than you're going to need, but this is one of the ways that you improve a team over time. So you can see my Haikatun is running at 299. Again, only 2.9k defense, 51,000 HP. You could be lower than this, but my point is at stage 20, you don't need crazy HP in defense. And if you need more, think about that shield set or think about bringing in a champion like Seal of the Drakes who gives you more tankiness, more survivability, more security. So Haikatun is fast, but otherwise she's pretty normal. Like even her accuracy isn't that high. She's going to do a fine job in this role because that's what we want her to be, is fast. Now, Ugo has we need accuracy on Ugo to land the debuffs. 225 is all you really need. You don't need 525. This is for Hydra. But for Dragon, you only need 225. And that'll take you all the way up to stage 25, by the way. 225 accuracy. Speed is good at 256. You don't need quite this fast. Again, even here, I think if you had your Haikatun, say, running at 250 or 260, and everybody else running around 210 or 220, you're probably going to be more than fine in this location. Royal Guard does have a lot of crit damage here at 317 and a decent amount of attack at 4,400. His accuracy is necessary for him to land some debuffs. He has a decreased defense. He also has a slow on the waves and stuff. But honestly, you don't need any accuracy. If you had 0 accuracy on Royal Guard, you're still going to do just fine. But you do want as much crit damage out of him as you can get because his A2 hits really hard. And the harder you can hit the dragon, the faster the run will go. Arbiter is running very fast. You don't need her nearly this fast, but I would say, again, like Haikatun, if you could get her over 250, 260 as a minimum, that's probably a good place to be. Accuracy is not as relevant on her, although, like I said, we do want that weaken from her A1. So again, 225 accuracy would be good here. And then again, defense, 3K, 3.5K, 62,000 HP is good here. I have her built for other things. I don't use her in PvE much anymore. So this is a strong build for PvE at this kind of stage, at stage 20. But it would probably be too weak for certain PvE stages in hard mode. But for right now, she does a good job. She's also an AoE reviver. I'm not using her that way. I'm using Syl as the reviver. But here you can see Syl, 226, about 4K defense, 80K HP, which is a nice HP pool there for this level. And then 411 accuracy. That's going to help her land these stuns against the waves. But again, 225 is all you need. Speed is perfect, I think, for her. And you don't need this much HP, but it's a good defensive number to reach for Syl of the Drakes if you happen to have already collected her. As far as the AI is concerned, you can see I haven't put any AI in because it's not really necessary with my gear. But you may want to consider changing the commands that you give your team depending on how close you are to potentially losing or if you want to optimize your speed. So let's just do this one. This one should be a lot faster. What was the last one? It was about just under 3.5 minutes. You can see that decrease defense out there helps. And then there's the stun from Syl of the Drakes. We only landed it on one champion, but we have a lot more damage in this team from Royal Guard than from Athel. He's built a lot better. So we're going to move through these waves a bit more quickly. Now, a team like this, how long would it take to get a team like this? Well, we need our Arbiter. Well, we don't need our Arbiter, but we have our Arbiter in this case. So this would be, I think, a solid mid-game team, right? This is once you've already been farming stage 20 for a little while. You've got some good speed gear. Maybe you've got some good perception gear from forging it from faction wars materials and stuff like that. So this might take you another, say, 2 or 3 months past the previous team. Shouldn't take much longer than that. If you are farming stage 20 consistently with that previous team, then you're probably at least halfway to your Arbiter, and you already have your High Katoon. Now, if you don't have Ugo, I get it. But again, you don't need Ugo here. You just need a drop defense champion. We could go back to Duke the Pierce. You could bring in Deacon Armstrong or Stagnite. They are weak affinity, so that'll slow you down a little bit. But those champions are basically survivable enough that you don't have to worry about them dying, right? They're going to be tanky enough even if they're weak affinity. It's just that you increase like the variability of the runs when you have a weak affinity debuffer. So here we've gotten down to 1:25, so significantly faster, less than half the time. And again, you can see these are all free-to-play friendly champions, right? We have 3 free champions, 2 login reward champions, High Katoon and Scylla the Drakes. The Arbiter, everybody can acquire. And then Ugo and Royal Guard in these cases, just regular epics. So you can really farm this stage relatively quickly. Again, I have very good gear. You might not farm it in 1:25. You might farm it in 2 minutes or 2:25. But this team should be better than the previous team that we were talking about with Athel and Apothecary. So this is where we want to move to next. Now, again, as we proceed with our account and our account gets better, we want to introduce those better champions in order to speed up this farm. So I'm going to move here to a third team. And basically what we've done here is we've replaced we've replaced Arbiter with Astrid. Astrid gives us the same, not the same amount of turn meter increase, but she gives us the turn meter increase, but also that increased attack. She also gives us an AoE weaken now. So we have a decreased defense from Deacon, an AoE weaken from Astrid, and then we have 3 damage dealers, because what we're basically saying is we're tanky enough. We're not going to die. We're just going to nuke everything out. Remember when I said there are 3 ways to handle the wave content, right? The first one is to tank it up. The second one is to nuke it, or the first one's to nuke it out. The second one's to tank it up. And the third one is to crowd control it. Well, what we're doing here is we're going to the nuke it out kind of strategy with a little bit of crowd control, because we do have slows and turn meter decreases. So the enemies basically shouldn't get a chance to go. Now, one of the things you'll notice here is that Deacon is weak affinity. So there's a little bit of additional variability here. My Deacon is very strong. He's not going to die. I'm not worried about that, but he might not land his decreased defenses, which could impact the duration of the run. But in general, this should be faster because I'm running 3 damage dealers as opposed to 1 or 1.5. Now, my Deacon is running fast, about the same speed as my High Katoon, 298. Astrid is at 342. You can see Thor here is decently fast. He's got the accuracy he needs and pretty good crit damage at 282. Again, you don't need these stats. The stats will just affect the speed of the run. But one of the things that you want to be aware of for this particular team is because we're bringing 3 damage dealers, we can't really take that many hits. We have a little tiny bit of healing from Astrid and Deacon's leech ability. But otherwise, we're at risk of getting nuked out here. So the boss basically can go once and then he has to die. If you can't do that, you're better off bringing Scylla of the Drakes back in or Rector Draft back in to give you some more tankiness, healing, and that emergency revive, and that would be better. So this is really, once you start to get the gear where you could just nuke out these waves hard, and you don't have to worry about that boss getting more than 1 turn, now you can upgrade to a 3 damage dealer kind of setup. So we're going to go ahead and run this team, and it'll probably be a little bit faster than the previous one. It won't be a ton faster because honestly, most of the damage against the boss is still going to come from Royal Guard. It's going to kind of depend on Deacon Armstrong here. If we land our decreased defenses, we're going to be fine. If we don't land our decreased defenses, it'll probably be about the same amount of time as the previous team. Looks like we're doing okay here. And again, I didn't program this team, so you could also do that to optimize it. You see that Coldheart just used her Heartseeker, so she's not going to have it available against the boss. We get the decreased defense, so that should help. We'll see how fast this is going to be. The boss will get at least 1 turn. Hopefully not a second one. If we had the Heartseeker, it probably would have guaranteed that he didn't get 2 turns. Oh, maybe the boss won't even get 1 turn. Again, if we had the Heartseeker, he'd be dead by now. So there it is. So that is faster, 52 seconds, 40 turns. And that makes sense, right? We put in more damage dealers. And the idea here is to let the boss only get 1 turn or no turns. That's, we're trying to nuke as hard as possible. In terms of the time frame from the previous team, like if we go back to the first team to this team, it's going to be at least 6 months. You're probably going to have either pulled very good champions or gotten a good few fusions that could help you get here. Obviously, Astrid was a fusion and Thor was a fusion. So if you have these champions already, if you were around long enough to fuse these champions, then you could probably set something up like this up relatively soon. And that would help you speed farm Dragon Slayer. If you're farming stage 20 in under a minute, that's a really good, healthy place to be. Okay. Don't worry about getting down to like 12 or 15 seconds. I know that would be awesome, but really this will go fast. You will burn through your energy quickly. You'll use up all your multi-battles, and if you have to manual, you can manual a little bit here. It's not so bad. And remember, of course, you can use your super raids as well. I'm not using them here because I'm trying to demonstrate a lot of different teams, but that'll speed things up as well. That's team number 3. Now, this team, I think, could push up to stage 25 pretty comfortably and maybe even handle the first few stages of hard mode. But again, if I was struggling with any of that, what I would probably do is bring back in somebody like Syl of the Drakes to add a little bit of durability to the team, but also that AoE stun can be really effective at making a team like this more survivable. If the enemy can't go, your squishy champions aren't at risk. So just keep that in mind. All right, we're going to step up to another team that should be even faster. Eventually what you're going to want to do is get away from the 3 damage dealers and go to Seer. Right? This is where you're going to want to end up. So what we were doing on this third team here was more debuffs, more damage dealers. But now what we want to do is we want to get faster and smarter. We want to get both, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to use Seer. I will show you, my Seer is built really, really well. You don't need her built this well for stage 20, but I need her built this well for stage 10 of hard mode. Now, one thing that I'm going to point out here is the accuracy. She has accuracy. You don't need accuracy on your Seer. She ramps up her damage on this Karma burn by stripping buffs from your team. So she removes all buffs from all allies and enemies. It doesn't take accuracy to remove buffs from allies. It does take accuracy to remove buffs from enemies. But typically when you're speed farming, you're going to set her up to nuke out a wave before it ever goes. So you don't need accuracy in order to do this. I have accuracy on her for other things, but honestly, you could have 0 accuracy here and it would still be just as effective for Dragon. So we want to set her up with buffs. And the way we're going to do that is through Lydia and Mithrala. They're both 3 champions. Either one will work on their own, but they work best together if you have them both. But if you don't have Lydia yet, all you need to do is maybe keep a decreased defense champion in like Deacon Armstrong or somebody else, or a weakened champion like Estrid, and that paired with Mithrala should be enough. So if you have Mithrala but you don't have Lydia, you're still okay. Renegade is here for the reset. That's going to allow Seer to get back to her Karma burn relatively quickly. She's the slowest champion on the team, I think, or just, above Royal Guard. So what's going to happen is Lydia is going to go first, Mithrala is going to go second, Seer is going to nuke. That's going to end wave 1. Then wave 2, we're going to get everybody goes, and Renegade will reset that. And so when Seer goes a second time, she'll nuke and clear the wave. So we should get to the boss in like 10 turns, maybe, or 12 turns, something like that. And then Royal Guard is here to kill the boss. Seer will also help with the boss a little bit. But again, you want that big, hard-hitting nuker to help you clear the boss. And Renegade will also help the nuker get back around to his major hit, his A2, faster. So, Renegade is not, she needs to be a little bit survivable. You can see 2.5k defense, 68,000 HP is pretty good. I would say if you had, 2.5k defense and like 50,000 HP, she's probably fine. But as you push up past stage 20, you need more stats. So that's all that is. Okay. So let's go ahead and try this one here on stage 20. We'll see how this works. Should be relatively fast here. So we get the debuffs out. We did miss some of them, but it doesn't matter. Seer just nukes so hard. That was funny. Mithrala didn't even get a chance to go. I thought Mithrala was faster than Seer. I don't know why that happened. Or did I miss it? Did I not see it? I don't know. Anyway, we get the debuffs out on the boss. We're going to get the nuke here, and then hopefully, I don't even know if Renegade will get a chance to reset, because her reset is on a 5-turn cooldown, which is pretty long. The poison sensitivity from Lydia and the poisons from Mithrala work really well together. But you can see there, 25 turns, 37 seconds. So just a little bit faster than the previous team. It felt faster, but I think the previous team was like, what, 40 seconds or 40, or maybe it was 50 seconds. So pretty fast here, right? And again, this is how we're iterating on these teams. We go from tank-heavy teams, really survivable teams with a little bit of damage, to more and more damage. We bring in more damage debuffs. We bring in harder hitting champions. We add more damage dealers. We get a reset champion to get them back around to their skills faster. That's basically how this progression happens here in Dragon's Lair. And that's true pretty much in all the other dungeons. Now, I'm going to skip all of the stages in between because the teams can work. All of the teams that we've talked about can work here in hard mode as well. You can just keep pushing with any of these teams. 2 things to remember. One is affinity matters, so you may have to substitute champions at times. And the second thing is stats matter, specifically speed. But we're farming speed gear here. So hopefully this is improving our speed gear, and so our roster is getting faster. And as we go up, we'll be able to handle that. Probably if you get stuck, you'll get stuck somewhere between 4 and 6, because this is where the speed really starts to ramp up. After 6, it's much, much faster, and you need to be a lot faster in order to take on these stages. But again, any of these team compositions will work depending on your gear. I'm just going to go straight up to stage 10 here. And what I've done is I've gotten a better version of this same team composition. So basically all I did was I swapped out Royal Guard and brought in Newt. Now, Newt hits a lot harder. The biggest difference between Newt and Royal Guard, they're both max HP hitters, but Newt hits 3 times on his max HP hit. So remember that there's a cap of 10% damage, like 10% max HP damage that a hit can do. But Newt can do that 3 times on this A1. So he can literally hit 3 times as hard as Royal Guard. And again, it's otherwise the same team. And so this may be slower than the previous run, but remember the previous run was on Dragon 20. This is stage 10 hard mode, but we're still hoping to do it in about a minute. Again, if we can do it in under a minute, that'd be awesome. So we do need to land all our debuffs. You can see Seer just crushes these waves. It's over so fast. Yeah, Seer has gotten faster than Mithrala. I didn't know that that was a thing. So that's happened recently. I don't remember when that happened. That was nice. That was really nice. I think she got an extra turn there. So this will be the fast version of this. Remember that Seer has a chance of an extra turn on her A1. So if she gets an extra turn, she'll come back to her nuke faster. But here, Mithrala is important to cleanse those debuffs. And then we get the decreased attack on the boss, which is really going to help us survive. And again, it doesn't matter if everybody dies except for Newt, because Newt is the one who's basically going to kill the boss here. But Seer did work there, broke the purple bar. We're getting close to dead, but I don't think the boss will get another turn. I think we should be on Newt's next turn. I think it'll be over. No, boss did get another turn, but now Newt should kill the boss. There it is. So again, if everybody dies, it doesn't matter. This is very consistent. I haven't had Newt die yet, and I haven't had Mithrala die yet. Sometimes everybody else stays alive, and sometimes they die. But I've run this, I don't know, I've run this version of this team maybe 60 or 80 times, and they haven't lost. So I don't know that it's 100%, but it's probably pretty close to 100%. And again, speed farming Dragon's Lair stage 10 hard mode in 1 minute and 4 seconds. You can see my best is 57 seconds with this team. So that feels pretty good to me. And hopefully it'll give you an idea of how to potentially progress towards that speed clear of stage 10 hard mode. Now, remember, I'm a free-to-play player. There are faster teams than this. And in fact, if you are interested in faster teams, you can come to the boss guide and look at the teams of the week, and you will find poison explosion teams, right? Again, going for the full nuke out strategy, the 3 different strategies, nuke them out, tank them up, or crowd control them. All of the fastest teams are going to be nukes, right? But this is HP explosions and activations. Here we've got a Seer and a reset with Kymar. Here we've got a triple newt, so those max HP hits kill the boss really fast. So they're all going to have those same setups that we talked about. They're just going to have the champions, the gear, the blessings that us free-to-play players and early game players and low spenders will never have. Like, I'll never have a double T-Ox with 2 6-star souls. Like, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So I'm not going to get down to 20 seconds or 10 seconds. That's not going to happen for me. But that's okay. If you have these kinds of champions and this kind of gear, this is where you want to come look for those really fast teams. Otherwise, use the teams from today's video as sort of a basis for your own theory crafting for your roster. Okay, that is it for me today. Let me know in the comments below, was this helpful to you in any way? And if you decide to rebuild a team for this tournament and the event that's going on with the drop rate, let me know who it is. Who have you built? How's it working for you? Did you get any faster? Did you get any more consistent? And let me know the champions too, especially if they're free-to-play friendly champions, so I can share those ideas with the rest of the community. All right, that is it for me today. Thanks so much for hanging out. I have been Colred. I will see you in another video soon.